Happy Sunday, y'all. Thank y'all for my extra 15 minutes. Sometimes the time just flies. Good morning, Bridget. Happy Sunday to you. Hello, lady. Hooty hoo. Evelyn, good to see you. Or in the chat, missed you in our community conversation the other night. But I knew you weren't going to be there, but we missed you. Hope everyone is well. Cut off my sounds on the computer. All right. Happy Sunday, folks. Glad y'all are here. Got something reflecting. That's it. I think that was it. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. Good morning. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank y'all for being here. Hope everybody has had a great week. Glad y'all are here. Hello from Houston. Glad y'all are here. All right, I'll get started. I actually have a little bit of prepared conversation for y'all today. Thank y'all for being here. Today my subject we're talking about is clarity. When clarity finds you, this is a conversation around my journey, my tiny house trailer, truth, and the gift of direction. And so that's what we're talking about today. Glad y'all are here. Good morning. Glad y'all are here to be in conversation. Last weekend, I was wrapping up Exodus Summit. Oh, I didn't even introduce myself. In the world, where's my manners? All right, let's get this going. Let's get this going right. As I introduce myself, I say hello. My name is Jewel Pearson. I built a tiny house in 2015 because my why is because I want to live in no freedom. It's a fancy tiny house because I don't believe you have to give up luxury to go tiny. I am a social entrepreneur, a lifestyle architect and strategist, and a longtime advocate for intentional living and representation in the movement, in the tiny house movement. And after living tiny for over a decade, I use my experience and expertise to help others create intentional, self-defined lives through home design, through downsizing, community, literal, figurative community. And if you'd like to connect with me once this video is live, you will find links to do so in the video description below. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, now would be a good time to do so. And please cut on the notification so that you know when I'm live over here. If I've shared a video, you will know. And so as I get into my conversations, I always share that it's not just about the tiny house. I am a tiny house dweller, but it's not just about the tiny house, which I have learned in my journey. It is about clarity. It's about alignment and liberation. So welcome. Thank y'all for being here. Good afternoon. Hi, Diane. Good to see you in the chat. Hey, Catrice. Happy Sunday, folks. So last weekend was Exodus Summit, and I share and I talk about it all the time. I talk about my friends Rashida and Stephanie who run Exodus Summit. It is the platform, and they are helping Black women leave the United States, find their why, all the things. Each year, October, they have a conference, and that was last weekend. And it's always a beautiful thing. It's not just for there it's about Black women leaving the US, but there's always so much more to it that even if that's not where you're what you're ready to do right now, or maybe even your plan, there's so much more each year to the conference, to the content that you get out of the conference. So it's always a really good time, a lot of great information, a lot of great speakers. It's always this was their 6th year. I have attended 5 of the 6 years. I've forgotten which year I missed. But I always um wonder, like, every year is just fabulous. So I'm always wondering how they're gonna top it the next year, and then they absolutely do. And so this year was not unlike that. But one of the things that one of the sessions, I think it was a Friday session, one of the notes that I got out of that session was around clarity. And clarity is something that I talk about often here, something in my personal life that I have been really focused on um, figuring out. And the speaker in the session mentioned that clarity brings confidence. And that was the note I wrote down. And it was absolutely something that I could relate to, how clarity brings confidence and alignment. But the quote was that clarity brings confidence. And the thing, as I talk through this conversation today, I'll share so much about how my clarity has brought the confidence in the work that I do. So today is the 19th. Tomorrow, October the 20th, is actually the day in 2014 that I bought my trailer from the trailer manufacturer in Florida. Bought it. It had been a process of, working on the specs, getting him to build my trailer per the specs that I wanted for my house. And I had done the research and did all of that work myself and specking my trailer out. And then I went to Florida, rented a truck, a Ford F-150, went to Florida, and I picked up my trailer. And so October the 20th, 2014 is when I um bought my trailer home. And I knew it then that my tiny house would be life changing, but the way it has changed my life is not what I envisioned at that time. Um, at that time, as I was getting my trailer and talking about tiny houses, I was more so focused on the building of the house. And as I always share, it has been much bigger than the house. Um, I was actually stepping into something that was so much bigger than I realized. I was planning to build a home, but I actually was changing my life, building a bigger life, and I would say building a movement. And I don't take that lightly. I don't say that in arrogance, I guess is what I want to say. Not saying that in arrogance at all, but in sharing my story over these years. Um in the beginning, obviously, I when I started this journey, and I've shared this from the beginning, there there wasn't anybody in the movement. I didn't see people who looked like me represented. And um that was a big part of why I started sharing my journey, why I still share my journey, so that we know this was also for for us. Thank you, darling. Um, I didn't see our stories. I didn't see our concerns. It was the bridge, absolutely. As I built my house and was living in it, first location, the RV park, I experienced racism, needed to move my house from there for safety. Um, None of that conversation was happening in the broader community because it wasn't their experience. It wasn't anything that they know to talk about. But when I started trying to bring those conversations to the table, because I've shared that I felt like we were challenging the status quo of housing. And when I say that, we were working really hard for the legalization of tiny houses at that time. For me, if you think about housing, the people who don't have housing, the first folks are the homeless population. If anybody needs housing, that's who needs housing. So, and then if you look at home ownership, the statistics for home ownership, year after year, Black folks at the bottom of that list, year after year, consistently. The gap of home ownership between right now, it is Black folks own houses at 44%, white folks at 72%. And that gap, even though supposedly, attention is paid to that gap, not anymore, I'm sure, because we know who don't give a shit about that. But that gap is widening. It is, I think I read something that said since the civil rights movement, the gap is the widest now since that time. Um, Thank you, love. So as I felt, what the work was challenging the status quo of housing and making sure the people who weren't included in housing were included in this movement. And I quickly learned that that wasn't the plan. That the plan at that time was let's legalize tiny houses on wheels, and then we'll go back and get those folks. We'll go back and get the homeless. We don't, and it was said, verbalized, written. We don't want to be associated with the homeless because there's a negative connotation right there. We want to get this done, and then we'll go back and get those folks. And so um it that never happens. I know that. But I was trying to make sure the people who weren't represented that should have been represented were in this conversation. And when I talk about racism and the exclusion or the equity, um, them folks is big mad. They want to talk about it. And I have shared how I actually received a threatening email. Folks didn't want to talk about it. When I talk about let's have representation at the tiny house events. So as Black and brown people are attending, they can be aware of what to expect. As Black and brown folks are attending and buying your tickets, there should be some conversation that includes them because um absolutely. Because my experience in placement was so different, where I could put my tiny house and where I could put my tiny house and be safe was a whole separate conversation from the experience of my counterparts, my colleagues. So, fast forward, my lesson from that, there were quite a few lessons for me um, from that was even as the allies were few, even as I was pissing people off, and they made sure to let me know I was pissing them off. Um, I've always known it was important. And the the first thing in clarity and the gift of direction is when you are called to a truth, you cannot shrink for comfort. Your clarity, your direction, your words have to be louder than other people's comfort. So that was the first one of the first learnings for me. Um, there's a quote that says, something like you have to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. That's been the case for me. I speaking at tiny house conferences and knowing that I'm speaking to and the conferences are often in rural America, but I'm up there talking about my experiences with racism. My so it wasn't always comfortable. My confidence wasn't always the strongest because I'd be out there by myself. Um, but I felt it that this was something I was supposed to be talking about. And so I kept going. I kept using my voice, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary, it was required. To whom much is given, much is required. I have been given much. I have been given much in this journey. And so early on, my clarity started in this is something way bigger than me. And I have been absolutely. That's the place for it. As beautiful as that place is, it is so steeped in racism. Thank you. Um, and so that has been my work. That has been the direction. That has been the clarity that I was given early on that I didn't just build a house. Um, hello, hello. I didn't just build a house. I built um my direction. I built my gift. I built the gift that was given to me to do this work and to do it in a different way, less about what paint colors I used and where I got my pillows and the aesthetics of my house. Um, you can tell folks who don't be watching you on YouTube and they be texting you while you're on YouTube. Um, it it became so much bigger and it became so much of a gift and a joy in what I was called to do, and a big blessing. And so for me, right, I'm right at the and I'm so grateful in this clarity that I see my full circle moments that they're they're right there for me. Um so tomorrow is the anniversary of me going to pick up that trailer that changed my life in the intention and the way I live, the house that I built, and then also the work that I do and the way I show up in the world. And so the full circle moment is almost to that exact day. Next week, I will also be going to on Tuesday. I'm traveling to Cleveland to testify before the International Code Council. The International Code Council, these are the folks who make the rules, the building code rules for residential and commercial buildings. Um, it is the code that is at the broader level for the entire country. It is the code that all of the cities and counties reference. And thank you so much. And I am going on Tuesday to testify. So they are having hearings, and I'm getting ready to drop right now a link in the chat for a petition. We're trying to take, we did make it over 10,000 plus signatures. So if you signed the petition already, I thank you for that. If you haven't, please sign this petition and add your name to the petition in support of the legalization of tiny houses on wheels. So I am, hey, Darlinda, thank you. So Tuesday I'm headed to Cleveland. So this organization, they make the code for residential and commercial housing. In 2016, there was a group of the leaders at the time who were working on code, and we were attempting to get the code for the legalization of tiny houses on wheels in 2016. But the timing didn't work out. And so the code that happened at that time was code for tiny houses on foundation. And so I didn't go to Cleveland. At that time, I was really new in, well, I was early in the movement. I did donate, I did support, sign everything that they needed in the back end support. I did, but I didn't go to Cleveland at that time. But I will be going. So 2016 got the code for tiny houses on foundation. And so now, 9 years later, we are headed to Cleveland. On Wednesday, we'll be speaking, testifying, as they call it, at this hearing at the International Code Council's conference in Cleveland, Ohio. What I know this to be is not a coincidence. There are no coincidences. This is divine timing, and this is really where full circle starts making sense for me. And so the backstory of this work for the council. So not April 20, what is this, 2025? April 2024 is when this larger group started working on the code for tiny houses on wheels. I probably don't have to say it, but as you all already know, that this group is mostly white men. That's a room full of, I I shared sometimes it felt like walking into a damn Klan meeting because they weren't listening. There's often a lack of respect for the women in the room. They get to arguing, or I won't say arguing, disagreeing, being disrespectful in the disagreement. It is to me, it's really representative of the world as it is right now. And so it became very apparent in these meetings. Exactly. It became very apparent in these meetings that most of them had their own agendas. So some of them work in manufactured housing, some of them work in modular housing, some of them work in these different entities. And so what they were pushing and pulling for were ways to bolster their own interest, their own money. And so what soon started happening was you realized their conversation wasn't, their work isn't necessarily for or in support of tiny houses on wheels from the perspective of the owner, me, building my own tiny house, or a small builder building their own tiny house. They are often some other stuff. And so I stopped going to the meetings, maybe after 3 or 4 months. Like, the meetings, it was frequent meetings. Several times a day, you'd be on the call for an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. And, Yes, I did. Yeah, that's a side conversation. I did. I spoke at his very first event. Yeah. Um, and after a while, it was like, why am I showing up to Klan meetings? Like, I got so much other stuff I could do if nothing other than take a nap. Like, why I had a stroke. Why am I sitting in spaces that aren't good for my energy? And so I stopped going. But I did make it very clear. Macy Miller, the I've had her on my channel. She is the very first person I saw to build a tiny house. She built her own tiny house. It is her story that I saw 2012, 2013 when I decided I was building a tiny house. It was her story, her journey that led me to building a tiny house. And so I get to call her friend now. And so I let her know I'm not coming back to these meetings. Like, I ain't doing this. But I am here as you need me, because she's gonna stay in. She's a white woman. She is gonna stay in there and stick it out. And she and Vera, another white woman in the tiny house movement. I'm saying white just so y'all are clear on who was sticking this out and why. They have attended, I believe, every single meeting and have stuck it out. Macy also came to the realization that our interests, the owner builder interests, weren't being represented well. And so from there, she went into another direction to create what they call a comment to and this comment is in addition to the work that this larger group is doing, but this comment that she created, um this comment that she created is focused on the owner builder. And so it is this comment with a whole bunch of parameters set around it to focus on the interest to protect the person who wants to go and build their own tiny house, to protect the small builder who wants to go build tiny houses, to give code for that person, those people. This is what this comment does. And that is what we are going to Cleveland on Wednesday. That is what we'll be testifying on and about in Cleveland on Wednesday. And so, again, for me, just within this week, this is the week that I bought my tiny house trailer in 2014. Now, full circle, I'll be speaking in front of, again, the ICC is one of those rooms where, again, it's white spaces, which is in my full circle moment, also why it's so very important for me to go and be in this room. We have 2 minutes to speak in our testimony. And y'all already know in my 2 minutes, I'm covering why this is important for our community. Got some statistics. You can't argue with statistics, even though folks try. Why this is important from a social justice perspective, why it's important from a climate perspective, why this is needed as people. I very quickly share how my house is saving my life, having experienced a stroke, how nearly half of Americans over 55 don't have a retirement plan, don't have retirement monies. This is my retirement plan. And so in my 2 minutes, and it is like 6 seconds under my 2-minute time period because we've been practicing, I get all of that in there. And it is so very, very important for me to be in this room to represent, as I have been representing over this last decade, to make sure we are, um, thank you, thank you, thank you, to make sure we are represented in this movement and seen in this movement and heard our concerns. Another full circle moment for me in this, is that one of the people that is traveling in this group with me that will be in this room is one of the same people that years ago, thank you, years ago when I was calling out the things, when I was calling out the lack of inclusion, and then I was calling out the racism and the people in the movement who were racist. Like, I was doing all the things. One of the people that will be in this room was one of the people who thought my voice was too loud. Actually said that my message would be better received if I was less, let me see, make sure I say, if I was less Malcolm and more Martin. Like, my words were harsh. My message could be better received if my words were nicer. And for me, the full circle moment is that that person will be in the room. I will still be talking about the same things because nothing has changed. In fact, the racism is worse. The homeownership is worse. Right now, we are in a worse space relative to everything that I was talking about 10 years ago. It is even worse right now. So it's not like I was making shit up then. It is like if y'all had maybe listened to me, we might be in a better space in this movement, a better where they could have worked um to make for more of a focus of equity in the tiny house movement if folks have been willing to listen. Um, the the interesting so I'm not going to out the person. What I will say is y'all already know me. I already I put together it wasn't confrontational, but I called out that this is a full circle moment. And I shared because we've been in meetings. I've not interacted with this person since that time that I heard he's so messy, Mary. He are so messy. I'm not calling them out. Um, I purposely have not interacted with that person since that time. Um, but because I don't move without alignment and clarity, I put I am not calling names, Mary. I sent as we're preparing to work together as a group to go to Cleveland to advocate for tiny houses on wheels. I would be remiss if I didn't call out the bullshit that we are we are a group and we're working together on this thing. And I was trying to work together with you years ago, and you didn't want to hear it. And now we going and we rah rah and team, and I would be remiss if I did not call out the the irony in all of this. And y'all know I ain't getting ready to do that. So I called it out. I sent a nice note to the group, to our core group, to call it out, to call out how we are in this full circle moment. And as we're working together on the advocacy of tiny houses, everything I said is I was speaking on truth then. And it is very clear that I was speaking on truth because the world is on fire and everything that I was saying um, is evident in the world. I also called out how both Martin and Malcolm were needed in our movement. The whitewashing of America, the whitewashing of history, folks have tried to paint Martin as just totally non confrontational. he was focused more on non-confrontation, but he wasn't without confrontation. He wasn't all joy like the folks who will quote him now on the socials. If that was the case, they wouldn't have had to kill him, and they killed him. Both of those voices were needed. They're still needed today. So it wasn't an either or. It was Martin and Malcolm, and so many others were needed. So I called that out. I also called out how policing the tone of the oppressed shifts the shifts the necessary accountability and responsibility and focuses on the comfort of the oppressor versus what the oppressed exactly versus um focusing on what the oppressed is saying. um let's see what else I said. It was all nice. Years ago my brother said my brother told me, so I'll write a letter in a minute. Um, my brother told me years ago that I can write some of the nicest, nastiest letters. Like he said, it'll be so nice, but it'll be so nasty. And he said I cut people with nice words, and I have not forgotten it. And I know that I do it. Um, Nice, nasty, nicety. Um, Michelle A had a song about that. I It was just as nice and pleasant, but it cut as I intended. We're not gonna be in the room together, and I'm not gonna call out that you told me I needed to be quiet. We're not gonna be in the room together, and you're not gonna acknowledge that this is I was right. I was right. Like I wasn't there was nothing that I was saying that wasn't right. We're not gonna be in the room and we're not gonna acknowledge that. Um, I don't need a response. I haven't gotten a response. Other folks have responded. I haven't gotten a response from this person. I don't need one. And I said that clearly in my email. I don't need a response. I don't need or expect an apology. I don't need that. What I know in my clarity and in my conviction is I still am working on what is right. Mary, you probably do. I am right. Right is right all day, every day. Right is right. And um, you should always, always, always be on the side of right. Um, my full circle moment. So the truth that I was speaking then is the same truth that is now the foundation of the work that I have been doing, the work that we have been standing on, the work that allows people to come say to me, I didn't know I could build a tiny house. I didn't know this movement was for me until I saw you. Last night, my friend Ediaka, who I've had on the channel a couple of times, the young indigenous girl. It's her last week was her birthday. She's 2 hours from me now. She used to be very close to me, but she's now 2 hours from me in the Durham, North Carolina area. And so I went up and saw her new spot and got to hang out with her and some of her friends. And she shared with her friends that when she saw my house, she knew that she was building a house that represented her indigenous um, culture because I built my house for me, for my culture in a time when folks weren't doing anything like that. So it's stories like that that remind me that the gift that I was given, the clarity that I was given, the direction that I was given, the work that I was given to do is exactly what I was supposed to be doing. So it's not a feel good story. This is a story about conviction. It is a story about what happens when you keep showing up. It's a story about showing up even when people don't understand the why behind your voice, the why of what you're doing, because it's not always for people to understand that. My why for my tiny house living, because I want to live in no freedom. My why for the work that I do is because this is a gift that I have been given. This is a voice that I have been given. This is the platform that I have been given in leading this for the folks who aren't represented. Um, I have to come back. I forgot you in that area. I was in closer to Hillsboro, and I don't exactly know where you are. Um, the lack of support early on, it didn't bother me. Well, let me say, it did bother me. It bothered me because I'm so clear on how right this work is. Like I can't understand how in 2020, whatever it is, here go Edica calling me right now. I told you folks don't be remembering that I do YouTube. But I have a message that I send folks. It's Sunday. I'm doing my YouTube thing so that they can know to go. Y'all, quit calling me. Go watch me. um, thank you. Um, this so my annoyance with them was, this is right. To fight racism is right. To create housing that houses the homeless is right. To challenge the status quo of housing so that Black people who are traditionally and purposely kept out of housing, have a new way to have I don't know, Evelyn, sometimes I can be pretty mad. At least I cuss all the time, so I'm not sure. Um to offer a new way, a quicker path, and a more affordable path of home ownership for people who have traditionally and purposefully been kept out of housing. That's right. We already know everybody doesn't want to do right. And so what I realized and have realized in my clarity of, because clarity is confidence, right? What I have realized is that sometimes that isolation, because I was isolated, I was having to build my own tables, like quit asking to come to those tables, be invited to those tables, and build my own damn table. Um, that isolation is often divine protection. Like I had work to do. I needed to focus. Like there was a calling for me on what I needed to do. And had I been invited to sit at those tables in other ways, maybe I would not have focused on what it was I needed to do so that the work for the community, the work for people who understand how important this is. The Mary who is in my chat, who is a white woman, but will and she and I have had where we've had to have a moment where I had to help her understand why I talked about what I talk about. And she's here, and that was years ago. But the isolation led me to the point of being able to represent something that wasn't being represented. And that is so, so very important. It the isolation often gives you space to get clear. Um, Mary said I had to be put in my place. I wouldn't say that, but we had to have a come to realization conversation. Um, but that isolation gives you space to get clear on who you are and what you're here to do. And fast forward to going to Cleveland on Tuesday as I stand in, like, I can't believe I'm getting ready to go to Cleveland to speak on the legalization of tiny houses. I've lived in my house for over a decade. This is part of the culmination of the work that I identified I needed to do. This is and I feel very strongly, again, if y'all haven't signed the petition, please sign the petition and add your name to it, to help us have some to have so that it's not just the 5 people testifying that they feel like are advocating for tiny houses, but it's 10,000 people who have signed the petition and added a comment and added a video. Like, you can actually add a video and comment to the petition. But that isolation um has led me to Cleveland on Wednesday. It is the clarity for me. Clarity is confidence. It is the continued clarity because it it helps me know that I have been walking in my gift all along. And that is the gift of truth telling, of advocacy, standing in spaces that weren't created for me, um, and making room for others. And Evelyn, I don't know if it will tell you you've already signed it. If you try again, I'm not sure. Um, that is what this full circle moment is reminding me of. That is um the awareness that I have right now. The other big piece of my clarity has been with the stroke that I experienced in 2023. I've shared all the ins and outs of that. I've shared how my brain is so much different now than it was before, and the hardship and the journey that it took for me to get validation that it is really different. It is because of impact and impairment, because y'all know I had that neurologist who didn't believe a word that was coming out of my mouth. Testing proved exactly what I was saying. And so that for me was finally an answer, validation, vindication for me that what I've been feeling, the confusion, because he's been telling me all along that that wasn't what I was experiencing, what I was saying wasn't part of the stroke that I'd had. Testing said it is, dum dum. So the validation for me in that I'm not just crazy, that this is what I'm experiencing is real. What I'm experiencing is as a result of a stroke. That validation reset me so that now I understand how to um I saw you when you popped up in here and I knew. So I want to say something to you because I was thinking about you. So when I say as I was thinking about saying my stroke, because Catherine always tells me I shouldn't say my stroke, I should say the stroke, or I experienced a stroke. In some ways I own that stroke because one, it was so my the what I experienced is so different from was different from, I don't want to say traditional stroke, but the impact that I experienced was physical impact was much different than what I know others experience. When I say mine, I've read the book about life, the transformation, life transformations, life quakes. I own that in that it was life changing. And so when me saying my doesn't mean I own it. I'm not exactly sure I'm explaining this the right way, but it is something that was necessary for me in my next step. So when I understand your point every time you say I should not say mine, but there's also something that it was life changing for me in that it elevated me to additional level of clarity, which is what I'm getting ready to talk about. It in the figuring out of the new jewel, the new brain. I got that. In the figuring out of the new brain, in the stillness, in trying to figure out who I now am and who I am post stroke. That was a long time coming because in the beginning I was really just focused on surgeries. Okay, thank you. Focused on surgeries and the physical healing, and I didn't get to focus on, and it was so many appointments. I would have 3, 4 appointments a week, and then I had the 2 surgeries. Then it was the healing, and then it was the follow-up, and then it was the medicine, and then, the surgery on my heart started sending me into afibrillation, and then I gotta deal with navigating that and the fear of when your heart is racing and beating in ways that it shouldn't, like, that's something you feel. So that was the journey. And then when I started finally being able to settle from that and then focus on the internal, the emotional side of it, the the mental side of it, because my brain is different. And again, navigating a space where a doctor is telling you, no, that's not what's happening, that you must be making it up. And he actually wrote that down, that in some paperwork, that I had imagined symptoms. So I'm navigating, trying to figure out what the hell is happening. Like I don't, my processing, my organization, my thought, everything is different. So it has been a journey in, and gratefully within that time I relocated to this space. This space has been so healing for me. But it was in that journey where I had to, exactly, because of him, they canceled my disability. Um that's beautiful. I'm glad you I'm glad you are. But it was in that stillness, in this journey, that I have now started to see and feel the clarity come through again, and the connection, all of this coming together. The stroke again gave me additional clarity on what I'm here to do, what honing in even more on what really matters, how fragile life is, how important and how precious the voice, because I had lost my voice. I couldn't speak when I experienced the stroke. How important that voice is, and the opportunity to be able to use it. It also let me, as a hey Vicky, it's also a reminder that clarity isn't like a one-time thing. It isn't that you get clarity. Here's a clarity. Here's your big picture clarity. This is everything. Boom, 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 boom. 1 to 10. Clarity is ever evolving. It ebbs, it flows, it deepens. Um, and as it deepens, it starts pulling even stuff that is scattered. Like, since this time, things have been just kind of, some things have been just kind of sitting out there, and it's like I'm trying to navigate and find my way again. This new clarity post stroke has, and this stillness and this refocus, um, thank you, has started realigning some of those scattered pieces. So what I know is that every bit of advocacy that I do, every no that I've received, not every bit of non-support, every misunderstanding, all of that prepared me for the work that I'm doing now, the work that I'm here to do, the work that is much bigger than the building of a house, the building of a tiny house, but it's rooted in the liberation that my tiny house represents, the liberation that it represents for me, and the liberation that it represents for the community. And so that is what I say, the clarity, the deepening of the clarity, adding a stroke, and then direction starts coming again, and you realize, these are some pieces that I need to add in route in this direction. So Wednesday is really, really personal. This testifying at the ICC is really, really deeply personal for me. Codes get help you decide. So you all know I am mostly in have placed my house in mostly rural areas because those are the areas that are more accepting of tiny houses. But codes, legality, having codes for building of a tiny house on wheels helps allow tiny houses, and cities and counties have to adopt it. It's not just it's not automatically in place for everywhere. Cities and counties have to adopt it. But if it's the code is there, if you decide that you are building a tiny house, you can go to your city county officials and say, I know this code is in the ICC, and ask them to adopt it, and ask them to bring it down if they into their code if they haven't done that yet. Most cities and counties are operating very, very behind. I think Charlotte is actually on code from 2018. So you can request that they bring the code in. But code decides the legality, which then helps with working with zoning. So it helps decide where you can put a tiny house, how you can be safe, because safety is one of the main issues for placement of a tiny house. Safety is a big issue for how it's built, and this code defines that. And so that is what is really important. Um, when I'm fighting for tiny houses, movable tiny homes, as that for some reason these folks have problems with calling them tiny houses on wheels, so we use movable tiny homes. As we're fighting for movable tiny homes to be included, we're fighting for accessibility, we're fighting for affordability, we're fighting for agency, fighting for communities that have systemically been excluded from traditional paths to home ownership. And that is why representation matters. And that is why this work is important, because our stories bring the context to this conversation. Our presence, my presence in that room shifts priorities. They have to hear my voice in my 2 minutes that I get to speak. I'm not asking for permission. I've never asked for permission. I show up because I get to be in these rooms. I show up to say, you don't, I'm not asking for permission to exist. I show up to say, I already exist. Now listen to what I'm saying. This work matters. It's not just about policy, it's about protection, it's about liberation, it's about affordability. It's about doing things differently because housing doesn't work right now, for the masses. And so and this is part of my legacy. And so where I have used my voice for these 10 years to okay, Evelyn, to make space for us to be seen, to be saved, to be included. What that has taught me is that when you walk in integrity, time becomes your proof because what I was saying 10 years ago is right in our face right now. I don't have to argue the value of how and why my words are important. Um, you just keep walking in truth, and the truth, and was it truth will set you free. The truth will show up. Just keep showing up in that truth. The people who couldn't see the vision, couldn't understand your words, will eventually have to see the fullness of what you were saying. For me, it's not about ego. I hope y'all know that. It is absolutely about confirmation. It ain't about ego, but I'm always one in my nice nasty that'll be like, I told you so. Like I tried to tell you. I tried to told you. Um, it is about understanding that um your voice has purpose, even when what you're saying isn't popular. Your voice has purpose. You have something to say, and you don't shrink because it's unpopular. So, 11 years ago tomorrow, I, I bought and brought home a trailer that is the foundation of that house, that part of the house right there, my baby. Um, because I wanted to live in no freedom. 11 years later, I have this liberation is saving my entire life after experiencing a stroke. It is the practical application of my why. Um, I am headed to Cleveland in a space of knowing that this clarity, this gift that I have been given has created a different type of freedom for me, a personal freedom, a freedom to show up as I'm walking in my gift in the world. And that freedom that is a freedom that is available for all of us. And that freedom comes from when you're walking in your truth, even if it costs you, whatever that looks like. And I always say, if it's people, places, and things, walking in your truth and using your voice, even when it's not popular, even when your voice has to shake. And so as I say that, um, thank you, love. Hey, Mara. Um, if you are in a season where your voice feels heavy, misunderstood, uncomfortable, clarity, truth always wins. As my note from Exodus Summit, clarity brings confidence. You need that confidence to be able to walk in that, to use your truth, to help your voice not to shake. Clarity brings confidence. So keep walking in that gift. Keep standing in the truth. Because what is and might feel uncomfortable right now is likely to be the foundation of the work that you are here to do. And I am gratefully, gratefully living proof of that. And so sign the petition if you haven't, because I need the knowing of y'all that y'all got my back in Ohio, in Cleveland, as I'm expressing my stuff in my 2 minutes. Um, I'm sharing that. So I have had folks who have reached out directly. So there's a GoFundMe. I'm going to drop the link for the GoFundMe. Macy, so we have two gentlemen, Martin and look at my notes. Martin and David, two they're code guys who have worked in code for years. They are supporting this work. Martin will be in Cleveland with us. They have helped really write the code with Macy so that it is acceptable to the ICC. Macy has paid money out of pocket for them. And so she has a GoFundMe to try to recoup some of that and to add funds to help people travel to Cleveland. So I'm going to drop the link to her GoFundMe in the chat. I am sharing my information on the screen because some people have reached out and said, I would like to help you directly with your travel. And so I am sharing that link if you are so led to. Here is the link for Macy's GoFundMe. Let me put that. I dropped it in the chat. That's the GoFundMe that Macy has put together. If you want to contribute and get a really cute sticker, I'm going to drop this other chat so you can contribute here and get a sticker that indicates that you supported this code for movable tiny houses. We're making history. We made history in 2016. I believe when we leave Cleveland, we will make history again. So if you are led to donate to the GoFundMe, to donate and get a sticker, or if you want to donate directly to me, I'm taking it and I appreciate it. That is a question of whether there's a recording. So I am intending to document all of this. So I'm hoping that I will be able to record our testimony. So we'll see. I hope so. Thank y'all. I'm grateful for clarity. I'm grateful for y'all. I'm grateful for this work. The work that I have been put here to do, the gift. A few years ago, Stephanie Perry, Exodus Summit, my good girlfriend, was saying that she doesn't like the word purpose, like the definition around like we've got something. This is why you're here. This is what you're supposed to do. So she doesn't like the word purpose, and I probably didn't explain that the best way is the way she said it, but it resonated with me. So it's I have taken on gift because this work is a gift for me, and so I'm grateful to get to walk in this gift and do this work and support y'all. So happy Sunday, good people. Thank y'all for being here for this conversation. I will keep y'all posted on how things go. And I thank all of y'all for being in conversation, for showing up and being here on Sundays. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great rest of the week.